Hello, lovely viewers, and welcome to my first ever devlog. Yeah, I've never done a devlog before, but game dev is new to me as well this year. I started using GDevelop early this year, and to begin with, I was just sort of trying to figure out how to use it. And I made a couple of prototypes, and one of the prototypes was the dialogue system and learning how to use that by constructing it. And another one I did was an inventory system that I came up with. So these were really great learning tools just to sort of create prototypes. And after I created the yarn prototype and I figured out how to use yarn properly, I then decided to create a YouTube channel and do some tutorials showing how to put a dialogue system together because I struggled a little bit with it because the tutorials I found on YouTube were a bit out of date and GDevelop has been updated since they were made. So I struggled to get my dialogue system to work properly. And when I did figure it out, I decided that I wanted to create my own videos. And so I did. I didn't have any plans to do a YouTube channel at the beginning of the year. It just sort of happened. And the last couple of months I've not been very well, so I've not uploaded anything new. And I've not done much game dev, to be honest, either. And then about 3 weeks ago, I sort of sat down in front of my computer and thought, come on, it's been ages and I really enjoy this stuff. Let's get back into it. I'm feeling better now, so let's get on with it. And I thought, well, what shall I do now? Shall I do another tutorial? Shall I work on my actual game that I'd like to make? What shall I do? So I decided to get stuck into my game and also to do a devlog. And I thought doing a devlog might be help motivate me and sort of hold me accountable as well. So, obviously, if you're doing a devlog and you're sort of doing one every 3 or 4 weeks, then you need to have something to show for it. You can't really do a devlog if you haven't done any work on your game. So I thought it might help motivate me, keep me motivated. And I also thought it might be entertaining to watch because I know from experience that watching devlogs is quite motivational. And it's always interesting to see how other people work, even if they're using a different engine to you. Um, it can be still really quite motivating and just interesting to see how other people are progressing with their game. So I think a devlog would be quite a good idea, and I probably could do one every 3 or 4 weeks. And this first one will probably be a bit longer than the future ones because I've never done one before, and I need to kind of explain my game and what I've been doing this year. Because between the tutorials that I've done, I've been working on artwork in the background between those videos, and and in the last 3 weeks, I started actually putting my artwork into a game and getting things actually, interactive, so they're not just illustrations anymore. So I think what I'll start by doing is I will talk through my progress so far, my little game here, which isn't really a game yet. It's sort of well, kind of a prototype as well, just a more polished one than the sorts that I was using before. And if you've seen things like this, using my placeholder artwork for tutorials and also just to help me learn, but I've got some proper artwork now, more polished artwork. Um, and anyway, I'll talk through my game. So here's my little game. Here's what I've got so far. If I just walk down the street with my little character, so as you can see, I've designed this little character. He's been sort of buzzing around in the background for most of this year. Actually, I think I might even have designed a version of him last year at some point when I was throwing together really early daydreams about making a video game. I did create this character. He's been through a couple of different iterations. I'll just show you that actually. This is in Illustrator. This was the first version of him, which I think actually looks more like a lamb, a sheep, than the other one does. But I don't know. I came back to this character this year, and I decided to redraw him, recreate him, and I just this so this is the final version. This is my iteration. I just really prefer it. It might not look quite so sort of like a sheep as this one does, because it is supposed to be a lamb slash sheep, um, and But yeah, I settled on this when I've just added these sort of spiky little hair and made the ears a little smaller and just tweaked him. I was experimenting here with facial expressions, but I'm not sure it really works. I might maybe animate the eyes to show emotion. I'm not really sure yet, but this is the guy I settled on. And then in After Effects, I've animated him. I've done a walk cycle, which I'm quite pleased with. I don't have experience with sort of traditional animation. The stuff I do at work is simple transitions and fading in and out and things swiping across the screen, stuff like that, sort of or glorified PowerPoint really. As you can see, there's no jump animation yet, but there will be. But I'm really pleased with the walk. I think he's quite sweet. I think sort of the attitude about him is quite nice. And I'm quite pleased with that. So as you can see, he's got this street. This is going to be his house, and you're going to be able to go inside. And I'm working on one more scene at the moment. Actually, I'm working on his bedroom, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's just artwork at the moment. It's not interactive, but this is the street where he lives. And so you've got this row of houses. You've got parallax scrolling, as you can see just to the right there. Um, I'll walk all the way to the other end again. And so there you go. You got parallax scrolling, complete artwork, sort of final quality artwork, and a character who walks smoothly down the road. Now, one thing I have actually finished is the dialogue system, and I'll show you that. It's kind of a accumulation of all the stuff I've learned. It's a one button dialogue system. I've come up with a really nice, smooth system for that, where you use the same button to launch dialogue, skip through dialogue, and end dialogue. All the same button instead of having to have different buttons. And I struggled to make it work before, so I had a separate button to launch dialogue and then a different button to go through the dialogue. But now I've got it working on one, and I can show the events for that maybe in another video. Anyway, you press X to start chatting to this chap, and you lose your platform behavior, so he gets frozen in place. Um, and as you can see, well, you probably missed it actually, because I was waffling on. Where are we? GDevelop preview. When you talk to somebody, the background animates in. It's just an opacity tween. This thing just fades in. I'm using BB text, which lets me color different words and have italics and bold. You can also have shadow and outline, but I think they look a bit like crappy word clip art, so I don't use those. Underline doesn't work. There's some sort of bug. But you can have colored words. So here, for example, the color of his hoodie I'm using when his name is mentioned, and you press X and you go to the next line. And again, I'm just coloring the word Herbert. The portraits here change when the different people are speaking. These aren't animated, but I'm wondering about having different facial expressions for the characters. These two characters, where it's the same one, is not going to be in my finished game. It's just I just chucked it together, basic shapes, so that Trevor here has got people to talk to, so I could test out my dialogue system. In other words, they're glorified collisions, really, just so he's got something to press X when he's standing next to launch the dialogue with. I have the whole sentences appear, they fade in. Each sentence has an opacity tween, and it only takes half a second, I think. You've got an options interaction here, as you'll have seen before in the other tutorials. I've got a custom pointer. I just did a triangle with rounded corners, and you've got two options. This behavior where the sentence moves is just something that is it's just how it is. I can't turn that off. I'd love the sentences to just stay still and only the pointer to move, but unfortunately they shunt like that, and there's not something I can do anything about. It's just the way the extension is. But it's not the end of the world. So you choose your option and you get your response as usual. And I decided to have the whole sentence appear because I'm a bit over it with the typewriter thing. I just I'm not that fond of it really. I know I've done 4 videos about it, but I'm not really all that fond of it. I know it's very popular. It's classic. It's back before we had voice acting and developers wanted to communicate how speech might kind of look, I guess, as words appear. Because when you speak, your whole sentence doesn't appear all at once. The words come out one after another, and typewriter kind of gives that same sort of feel, a sentence forming slowly as a person speaks. And that was before we had voice acting and all the rest of it. So it made sense. These days, um, not that my game's going to have voice acting, but the whole typewriter thing. I think it's probably less relevant these days. I know people use it because it's classic and it looks nice. It's one of those things like pixel art. We don't need pixel art anymore because we can do very detailed, smooth graphics, but it endures because people like it. It's classic. It's people have a nice sort of romantic idea about it. And a throwback to the 80s and all this kind of stuff. People have these romantic ideas about these sorts of things. But anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying I've gone for a sentence by sentence approach because I find typewriter a bit annoying. um, excuse me. Um, if you're a fast reader, and I'm not, to be honest, I'm not a fast reader. I'm pretty average, I expect. But some people might want to skip through this, quite quickly because they're fast at reading. And also, although it's not much fun to think about as a game developer who's written all this dialogue that they're proud of, but some people might not want to bother with it. They might want to skip through it like that. And it's heartbreaking if you've written this dialogue for 3 weeks, but some players are just going to want to skip through it and get to the puzzles and the platforming. They're not going to want to look at it. And I think you need to give them that option. As I say, it's not much fun to think about people treating your game that way, but if they want to, they bought it. They shouldn't have to hold their thumb down and wait for the text to appear for 2 minutes. But obviously different tastes and so on. But I like the idea of slow readers having all the time in the world and fast readers being able to flick through quickly. And it's got a nice subtle sort of opacity tween animation on it, which I like. And this is just the second character. You need 2 or 3 characters to test your dialogue system properly, really, because once you introduce a second character to talk to, that raises other issues like needing a second dialogue branch, launching the different branches for the different characters. So if your dialogue system works when you've got 2 or 3 different people to talk to, then you can be pretty confident that your dialogue system is pretty solid and it works and it's going to behave itself. So, and these are just placeholder people and placeholder dialogue, and they have a second thing to say when you talk to them a second time. Those of you who've seen Life of Brian will kind of get my "Don't you oppress me" line, but probably most of you aren't that old. Anyway, so the dialogue system I'm really proud of. I think it looks nice and it works. It's really solid. You can bash away at the X button and it won't break. I've got something in place that stops you speaking to the person again for 1 second. So you can't if you're hammering away at the X button because you want to skip the dialogue, you can't accidentally launch the next dialogue straight away because there's a second before the X button will let you interact again. So it's just another sort of I can't think what the word is, but that will stop people accidentally launching the next dialogue and getting stuck in it and getting fed up. So that's about as far as I've got. I have got some collisions for him to jump on just to sort of test it out. Uh, he's got the platformer character behavior in GDevelop. So with that, you can tweak things like jump height and gravity and how heavy or light he feels, all that sort of stuff by tweaking the numbers in the object. But it's all set up. The parallax scrolling was quite easy. I've got a layer in the background that repeats horizontally, and I move that at a different speed to the foreground to create that nice parallax effect. So I think now I'll talk about the illustration side of things because this is about as far as I've got with the game as such. I mean, the dialogue system is finished. I'm really pleased with it. And I'm going to work on an inventory system next so that he can pick up objects and then he can use objects as well. And there's going to be a little rucksack or something in the corner here, and you'll be able to press a button and see what he's got inside his bag. So it's going to be some basic sort of puzzle solving in the game. involving inventory items. But anyway, now I'll talk about my illustration stuff now. So I prepare all my illustration in Adobe Illustrator. I like working with vector artwork rather than pixel based. And as you can see, my style is very chunky, colorful, blocky. That's just my style. That's the way I like to do it. These movie posters, or that's not a movie poster, but these posters I did just a few weeks ago. I spent the morning doing movie posters, fake movie posters. So I came up with them, and I came up with this character as well. And yeah, this is nearly finished. Um, he actually, the books are hidden. He's actually got. There we go. I thought there should be books on there. I'd hidden them. So this is nearly finished. And what I do when I've finished my working with vector artwork in Illustrator is I bring it into Photoshop. That's the wrong one. There we go. I bring it into Photoshop and hide my little characters here. Um, and I add texture to it. It might not show up very well on the video, but I've got a sort of subtle paper, card, parchment sort of texture over the artwork. Probably you might be able to see it on the carpet there. It's just got a bit of a texture, but that's over everything. And I just quite like that. Almost as if all these things are cut out paper, colored paper. And yeah, you can see the books are missing there, but anyway, I'll sort that out. Um, and also in Photoshop, I add things like fake lighting, faux lighting. So you've got the glow on the light that I've added, which is just this thing, as you can see. That's just a white circle that I've blurred and then faded back a bit. And I've added this sort of outer lighting effect as well. That's just a big circle that's got 15% opacity on it. And I did this glowy neon tubing in here as well. Most of it, though, is in Illustrator. Illustrator is 95% of it. And then I bring it into Photoshop to add some finishing details, some finishing touches. When it's ready to go into the game, here's the street again. I divide it into squares or rectangles, and I export each one as a PNG, and then I stitch them together in GDevelop, as you can see, like so, to build up the whole street again. And the reason for that is I read that GDevelop doesn't like big images. If I just tried to use this great big artwork, which is 4,260 wide, that wouldn't be good for the game, and it certainly probably wouldn't be good for people with older computers and things. This is going to be a desktop game. It's not going to be mobile. So, I mean, that does give me an advantage when it comes to thinking about images and stuff. I don't have to worry about mobile phones. But still, I hear it's good practice to avoid great big images and to sort of chop your artwork up into smaller pieces. So that's what I've done. But I do need to read up a bit more on that actually and see if I can find out how big the recommendation is, what the absolute biggest is, because I think my parallax layer might be a bit too big. This is my parallax layer, and this just repeats horizontally. And I've got clouds separate, which are even wider. That's 1920, this one. Not very tall, but very wide. So I dare say these need chopping up into smaller pieces as well. So here in the game, you can see that the houses, the street is 16 PNGs, all in this same object as separate animations. And that's a nice way of organizing things, actually. Instead of having 16 different things taking up space here, you've got them all inside the single object. And on the scene, I just stitch them together and make sure the animation is set to the right one. And I've got my parallax layer here. Oh, if I can click it, there we go. It's just another simple thing. And the clouds are separate as well. And that's about it for my first devlog. So, to summarize, the game itself is going to be a platformer with exploring, lots of talking to characters, picking up objects, solving basic puzzles. It's not going to be a difficult platformer like Celeste or Meat Boy or anything like that. You're not going to be dodging laser beams and hacksaws and not hacksaws. What am I talking about? Spinning blades. That's what I was thinking of. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a more gentle game. I don't even know if you can die in this game. Probably not. It's going to be a fairly gentle game of exploring and talking and puzzle solving. Um, and I haven't thought of a story yet, or I haven't thought. Yeah, there are lots of things I need to think about. This might even end up just being a polished prototype. So maybe there are two or three scenes that he can go to, he can pick up objects, he can talk to people. And once I've got all that working the way I like it, I could then take that and expand it into a full game. That's probably more likely my plan. Get the systems all working, all polished, and then develop it into a full game. Um, right, so but that's it for my first devlog. The next one, I'm going to talk about an inventory system. So between now and the next one, I'm going to design what the inventory system looks like and implement it into the game so he can actually pick up objects and store them in his rucksack, which you can then click into and see the contents of. But that's for next time. For now, I'm going to let you get on with your lives. Thanks very much. Good day to you.